Some of you probably have a dream of one day moving to Japan and living here for the foreseeable future. I've met many foreigners who moved to Japan with the same dream, but we're so excited to leave after a short time living here. So what are these 4 reasons that make so many foreigners leave Japan?
What you plan to do here will be one of the major factors of whether you'll be living in Japan long term or for a short while. Because the truth is, most English teaching jobs aren't a viable long-term option. I mean, you can keep working as a low-wage English teacher for decades, but that's just as soul-crushing as eating one of Japan's mayo corn pizzas. The biggest problem is that the wages are very low, ranging from about $2,000 to $2,500 a month US for most of these jobs. It's also super rare to earn a raise or even a bonus in these jobs. So no matter how many years or how hard you work, the chances of getting a higher salary is almost impossible.
Of course, there are other work options outside of the basic English teaching gig. If you got a master's degree, you can get a job as an instructor at a university. If you were good at speaking Japanese and have a valid skill, you can find work at a Japanese or international company. But even if you had those qualifications, you might want to think twice about moving to Japan, because your earning potential is just lower than in general here.
Compared to countries like America, you can earn way more money doing a similar job there than you would here. I have friends who told me that they can make up to $30,000 more a year in America than if they worked in Japan. That's a lot of money to say no to, so you really have to make sure that living in Japan is worth the huge salary cut for you. Also, if you think you'll just jump from job to job climbing the corporate ladder to get the higher paying position, think again. Unlike America, where it's common to gain experience at one place, then switch to a better paying position a few years later, in Japan you'll most certainly start off at the base salary for the position. That's because most Japanese companies prefer loyalty over pure skill. Of course, there are exceptions to this rule, but most companies would rather you stay with them and work your way up within their company. So in my case, with my English teaching certificate and years of real teaching experience under my belt, if I were to apply for a teaching job right now, I guarantee you that they'd all start me off at the base salary of $25,000 a year. Again, there are exceptions, but unless you've got a skill that's incredibly rare and in high demand, your previous work experience won't really be as powerful of a leverage as you think it'll be. Also, a lot of industries like English education have a cap on the salary. Of course, if you're from a country with a poorer economy, then the salaries in Japan are definitely much higher than what you would have back home. But as an American, I know that my earning potential is way higher over there than it is here. But work isn't the only reason why many foreigners choose to leave Japan.
If you don't know Japanese, you could have a pretty tough time here. Not only will it affect what kind of jobs you can get, but it'll also be hard to make deep friendship with locals who don't speak your language. In Japan, language barriers can be a problem for us because our country isn't culturally diverse like America or other countries. So there's not as much flexibility when it comes to working around language barriers. Of course, many people try hard to communicate with gestures or simple languages, but it's much better if you can speak Japanese. Some of you might be thinking, Japanese people learn English in school. Yes, that's true. But most of them forget all of it in a couple years after graduating. And let's be honest, the English education here isn't exactly top-notch. Most of the time, it ends up looking like this.
Good morning, everybody. So today's topic is, what does your father do? Taro, what does your father do? My father is a politician. He has an election. He's running in an election? Yes, he has a very big election. Okay. What does your father do? My father is a scientist. He studies Earth. He studies the Earth. Yes, he studies Earth and black hole. Alright, does anybody's father do something that doesn't sound inappropriate? Yes?
My father is a sports player.
What sport does your father play?
He plays tennis.
I quit.
Like I said earlier, if you can't speak Japanese, you're really missing out the full Japan experience. It makes sense because Japanese society is built on community and collectivism instead of individualism. So if you can't communicate with others, it's harder for you to become part of different groups in society, like your neighborhood or workplace and even your group of friends. That's why a lot of foreigners end up leaving Japan and move to a place where the language barrier isn't an issue. It might seem crazy that someone would move to a different country and never learn the language to fluency, but Japanese isn't the easiest language to learn. In fact, the US Department of State Foreign Service Institute ranks it as one of the most difficult languages in the world to learn for native English speakers. So you have to try really hard to study Japanese kanji and grammar, as well as practicing your listening and speaking.
If you're thinking about moving to Japan one day, or you're just coming here for vacation, I do highly recommend that you start studying now. There are a lot of good language learning options out there, but the one I've been definitely enjoying is Rosetta Stone. They're sponsoring today's video, and their app is a great way to help you achieve your Japanese language goals. Now, unlike other language apps, Rosetta Stone teaches you through visual association. So you learn by connecting words with their image, which is a way more powerful way of learning than direct word-to-word translation.
Juice. Juice.
One of my favorite features is the pronunciation practice, because even if you don't have someone to speak to in the language that you're learning, you can get some practice with the app.
男の子は食べています。
男の子は食べています。Now you can learn at any time, any place, and on any device. So whenever I have some downtime, I like to get a quick session in because it's so easy to just pick up where you left off. Again, if you're planning to come to Japan for vacation or to build a life here, I highly recommend learning Japanese with Rosetta Stone.
In fact, they're giving you guys a super generous offer. You can get the $299 lifetime plan for only $179 by using our link in the description below. They are also giving you a 30-day money-back guarantee, so it's totally safe to try. Plus, you can learn any of the other 23 languages available. So, give Rosetta Stone a try today with our link below. Trust me, your experience in Japan will be so much better when you can communicate and understand the people and things around you. Yes. He knows it. He knows the pain too.
As someone who's lived here for such a long time, I can tell you that Japanese people aren't the friendliest, and I don't mean that they're jerks or that they're bad people. In fact, most Japanese people are super kind, they're super polite, and they can be some of the most wonderful people that you'll ever meet. But they are quite shy and introverted, and if you aren't used to this, it might be one of the biggest social barriers for you.
There are many reasons why Japanese are so shy, but one of them comes from the rule 迷惑をかけない. It means don't bother others. And we've talked about in these videos, basically in Japanese society, it's so important not to bother people around you. The good part about this is almost everyone is very polite. Just look at how quiet and peaceful a super crowded train is to see how effective this rule is. But the bad part is that it also affects how we interact with each other in general. Small talk isn't super common here because most people are worried that it might be seen as bothersome. Of course, if you're at a party or bar or an event, it's usually okay to start chatting with people you don't know. But for the most part, people avoid these kinds of interactions in their daily life, which can make Japanese people seem cold or disinterested in others.
Also, making friends in Japan is a lot different from America. For example, I might shoot my buddy a text saying, "Hey, you want to hang out after work tonight?" And that kind of spontaneity is pretty normal. But in Japan, I'd have to ask my buddy, "Hey, you want to hang out? What day works best for you?" This kind of planning and scheduling for things like hanging out is pretty normal here. So before I got used to it, I kind of felt like my friendships with Japanese people weren't as deep and rich as the friendships I had with other foreigners. Some foreigners also have this constant feeling of being an outsider. Japan is a homogenous country, so if you don't look Japanese and you don't speak fluent Japanese, most people will assume that you're a tourist. Even if you're born and raised here, you speak native Japanese, and you've never been abroad in your life, you'll still probably find some people who will question whether or not you're really Japanese. I personally know some people who are so irritated by this that they believe that they're actually being discriminated against. Of course, I think it just depends on how you see things and how you see the world around you. I'm pretty used to these questions, so I just kind of see it more as a general curiosity or a misunderstanding. After all, I've experienced these same kinds of questions as an Asian living in a small town America.
So are you Chinese or Japanese?
Well, my parents are from overseas, but I was born here, so I'm American.
Huh?
I'm American. I grew up in this town. I've never been abroad. I don't even speak a different language. I only speak English, and I went to high school with you.
So are you Chinese or Japanese?
So if you're uncomfortable with the fact that you'll naturally stand out and potentially have others treat you as an outsider, then Japan might not be the place for you. But even if you speak the language, understand the culture, and have a great job, there's one thing about Japan that you cannot avoid that might make you want to leave here. I think Mother Nature herself has a beef against Japan because it gets hit by so many natural disasters. Living here, you have to prepare yourself for not just earthquakes, but tsunamis, typhoons, active volcanoes, landslides, flooding, blizzards, and the aforementioned mayo corn pizza, just to name a few.
It's tasty. Trust me. In an older video, we showed off some of the emergency foods that we keep on hands. Because when Japan gets hit by a big earthquake, the last thing we want is to be left starving. Notice I said when, not if. That's because Japanese scientists are predicting a really big powerful earthquake that is about 7.3 magnitude to hit Tokyo before 2050. That study estimates 6,140 people will die from collapsed buildings and fires. 81,000 buildings will be destroyed and 4.53 million people will be stranded and unable to get home.
I'm in danger!
The worst part about earthquakes is that they can set off a violent chain reaction. In 2011, a powerful earthquake that happened 45 miles off the coast of northern Japan resulted in a tsunami that devastated the area. In turn, that tsunami damaged the emergency diesel generators of the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant, causing large amount of radiation to be released into the ground, water, and air. So, yeah.
I'm in danger!
In 2011, I joined a volunteer group to do some cleanup of one of the towns in the area, and you can see just how devastating the tsunami was. This used to be a town with houses, schools, and shops, but it was completely destroyed. The waters got so high that you can see a boat on top of the town's hospital. And you can see the steel girders of this building completely bent from the force of the tsunami. These kinds of disasters just remind you that Mother Nature can wipe us out in seconds. And if natural disasters weren't enough, members of the animal kingdom might do you in. Wild boar attacks, while rare, can still happen if you're living in the countryside. And these guys can be extremely fast, aggressive, and dangerous.
One time we were hiking when a wild boar ran super fast in front of us. Even though we saw it for less than a second, we could really tell it was really strong, muscular, and that would have been in a lot of trouble if it attacked us.
It's kind of unsettling to know that we're sitting on a ticking time bomb, and I don't blame anyone for wanting to leave Japan, especially after experiencing a major disaster like this. Now, I still love living in Japan despite all of these, and I don't think I'll ever leave. But there are many people who end up hating their life in Japan, and there's a high chance that you might too.
You'll want to check out this video where we talk all about it, and we'll see you there.
Thanks for watching.
Okini!